Hello and welcome to the Palestine Matters podcast series. We're recording this series at the Beyond Borders International Festival at Traquair House in Scotland. Palestine Matters is a joint project of Beyond Borders Scotland and the Britain-Palestine Project. Please enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the third podcast in our series from the Beyond Borders Festival, Palestine Matters. We're exploring in this series current affairs, politics, the UN, but in this conversation we want to look squarely at the city of Jerusalem, the city that is at the heart of the contested land of Palestine. And our guests today have both lived and worked in the city as diplomats and journalists with children and families. And before we explore the politics of the contested capital, I want to ask both of them to give us a personal memory of their time in Jerusalem. And perhaps we should begin with you, Vincent.
Thank you, and thank you, Emma, for being here. My memory is a good one. I remember on a sunny day walking down from the Mount of Olives down the hill and into the old city of Jerusalem, ending in St. Anne's Church, I think it was. It was Palm Sunday. People were singing, people were carrying palms, and very, very happy. That was the Christians, but the place is sacred to three religions. So my other memory is of hustle and bustle, Jewish people going to the Western Wall, Muslims going to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Haram al-Sharif, the Holy Sanctuary, and Christians going to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's a very special place.
Emma?
My memories are contrasting. I think my first memory was a very violent one, and I don't know why I call it my first, but it was the biggest one. When I was on the way to school with my kids at 8 o'clock one morning, and we were late and in a rush, and the police stopped us because there'd been a suicide bombing at the school, and the bomber had reached the gates, and he'd been accosted by two brave policemen who triggered him to set off his bomb, and his head flew into the yard, and the first thing the new headmaster of the school had to do was to field this head and cover it up and deal with all the teachers and children who were traumatized by this. So that was one extreme of Jerusalem. And on the other extreme, I was picked up so many times by helpful Jerusalemites who'd fix my car or help me with directions or anything that was I needed. I found it an incredibly welcoming and warm place, full of mystery and myth and all good things like that. But it was two extremes of very traumatic.
There's a contrast in that Emma was there during the Second Intifada, which was horrific. I was there 2010 to 2014. The Second Intifada was never forgotten, never forgotten. But the episodes that are in Emma's book about suicide bombers were not my experience. I felt a rather colder situation of separation, despite what I mentioned about everybody cohabiting physically. There were taxi drivers from the west who wouldn't wish to go to the east. There were people who even thought the American Colony Hotel was dangerous, which is just below the Consul-General where I was. So a coldness and a separation despite the proximity. And I always say that spiritually the place is uplifting, politically headbanging, and that remains my memory.
Yes, there was one story of a church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which had a ladder on a ledge, and it had been there since the 19th century because nobody could agree to whom the ledge belonged. And there was this idea of propriety and property and arguments about this, but they were endless and steeped in biblical law and every other kind of law. There's no solution to any of these questions, it seemed.
No, I remember the ladder. I think the ladder's been replaced by a newer ladder, but the dispute continues.
Really?
So let's stay on that ledge. Let's sit on that ledge and explore that ledge. Explore why Jerusalem matters to so many different religions and people, and let's unpack that story a little bit.
Well, I'm not a historian, but if I go first, I'm not a historian, but for the Jewish people, Jerusalem is the center of their religion. All three of the main monotheistic religions are Abrahamic, so children of Abraham. I guess chronologically the Christians came after that, after the Jews. And for Christians, it's where Christ died and rose again. He was born in Bethlehem. And for the Muslims, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, the Haram al-Sharif, are the third holiest shrine in Islam, where Muhammad went to heaven in a dream. So in Arabic, they say the third of the two holy places, Thalith al-Haramain, which is a way of saying it's vital, it's important, after Mecca and Medina, but together with them.
I think it's also a place that the Palestinians have terrible trouble accessing, and since the Intifada, the second Intifada anyway, they haven't been allowed to go to their holy city, and it's profoundly difficult for them to see that people from Brooklyn or wherever in the world can access it as a right to any Jewish person, but they're not allowed to go and pray in their mosque. The Haram al-Sharif, which is a perfect mathematical symmetry, and the design is architecturally perfect, apparently. Not that I would know the basis for that, but it's something truly special, and the place will never ever be it's a source of just appalling fighting and conflict, and it's never going to be easy to solve.
Yeah. There is an inwardness for many Jews and many rabbis. It is forbidden to pray where the Al-Aqsa is, because the Al-Aqsa is where the temple was. The western wall is the remaining part of the second temple, I think, but the remaining part of the temple, and it's the place of prayer. But there are others who have now become more mainstream in Israel, including the National Security Minister, Ben Gvir, who deliberately goes up to the Haram al-Sharif, the Temple Mount, and prays. Benjamin Netanyahu says the status quo has not changed. The status quo is an understanding, unwritten I think, but an understanding that whereas Jews are able to go to the Haram al-Sharif, to the Temple Mount, they are not allowed to pray or offer sacrifice up there. And there are many rabbis who say, don't go there because you may tread on sacred ground. You may tread on where the Ark of the Covenant was. But mainstream are, if you like, being invaded by the extreme, which is to say that the Al-Aqsa Mosque shouldn't be there, and the next temple should be built there. So I rather agree with Emma that there will continue to be dispute. That's partly why the original plan back in the 40s and early 50s was that there should be a special status for Jerusalem and international supervision. Some say give it to God, but others say give it to the UN or to some entity that can be neutral. And that just reminds me of one more anecdote, which again I think is in your book, Emma. The people who actually open the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, hold the keys, are Muslim. And that's precisely for the reason that Emma said, that the Christians can't agree among themselves as to who should have it. So I'm not quite sure who gave the edict, but there are families, two families, in Jerusalem, Muslim families, who are proud holders of the keys.
For 700 years.
There is no other city in the world like this in terms of the emotional, spiritual. But to what extent is this really about politics? I mean, to what extent is it? Can we separate these out at all when we come to Jerusalem? Because in the end, it's also about a claim of a capital city between two states that both claim all of it or part of it as their city. It's about the influence of foreign evangelical Christians in the city itself and in the politics of Palestine. So is it politics? Is it religion? Is it emotion? Is it history?
All of the above.
It's a mixture. Yes.
Well, there's rules that are set by other people, and well, I think we should talk about the rock in the Temple Mount, in the Dome of the Rock itself. All this mathematical perfection and architectural beauty surrounds a rock that's unshapen and unhewn, and it has the mark apparently of the hand of God, the angel of God, that prevented or helped Muhammad's rising to heaven when he died. And that somehow speaks to the originality and the difficulty of the whole place that solving its problems is one thing, but describing it is also impossible, and it's rather like the rock sitting in the middle of this beautiful architectural dream.
That's right. The dream of Muhammad going to heaven in his dream is it's fundamental to Islam. It is about politics as well. Every square meter of land in this tiny land of Israel-Palestine is contested. There are people in the Israeli government now who say it's all ours. Some say God gave it all to us, but secular Jews in this government say, as a policy, it's ours. We have sovereignty, and the Palestinians are living there by permission, our permission. On the Palestinian side, it's mixed. The current leadership in Ramallah have recognized Israel as a state on the pre-June 67 lines. Not everybody agrees, but that is the PLO policy, Palestine Liberation Organization. So if there's going to be a solution, and that's a big if, but if there's going to be a solution, it will need to be one where each people feel safe. Safety first. Today there's no trust, partly because of the Second Intifada, partly because of decades of occupation. A big mixture. But if there's going to be an outcome, maybe there won't be a finished outcome, but if there's going to be a better outcome than the present, it will depend on people feeling safer with coexistence than the mistrust that leads to dehumanizing the other, which is a feature. How to generate that trust again, that will take time. Can it be done by the two peoples by themselves? I don't think so. Does it require international intervention? Yes, it does. Is the international community ready to pay the price for that? That remains to be seen.
I think also there's something about the way the two peoples have interacted over the past few years, few decades, that makes the dehumanization double-sided. There's an element of the Palestinians not believing in themselves. They may hate me for saying that, but I had an example when I had a baby. I chose to have a baby in Bethlehem because that was based on the European style of childbirth, whereas the Israeli hospitals are all practice the American medicine, which is less mother-centered and much more medicalized. And I, as a doctor, I knew that I wanted the less medicalized version. But I was criticized by a lot of people for not choosing the Israeli because it had to be the better way. Even some Palestinians thought it was the better way. And I felt that they didn't have the confidence in themselves and their own systems to know that they were actually fantastically good. And we have seen the medical system in Gaza just defy all limits of human capability and just indescribable. But I think there's something on both sides about the dehumanization that's got to be addressed. And if we can do that through the international system, we'll be making a start, but there's so much work to do.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal, and the current trend is for Palestinians to be under the kosh in Gaza, in the West Bank, with mass displacement, 40,000, 50,000 from the camps that I used to drop in on, and settler violence. And that asymmetry of power has been there for a long time, is growing, actually, the asymmetry, which is why I say that the international community has a duty, not just a role, but a duty to intervene, to hold the ring, to prevent worse.
But we've just failed so abysmally to say the worst possible thing is to allow this conflict to continue as it is in Gaza. It's the worst possible thing for the Palestinians, obviously, but it's profoundly the worst possible thing for the Israelis also. It's making them pariahs in the world's eyes. It's making them distrust the rest of the world. It's making them have an enormous conflict and terrible things going on between the various sections of society. And so the international community has failed them as much as it's failed the Palestinians.
Yeah, we do say in our charity, in the Britain-Palestine project, that we're there to try to generate an outcome, or to facilitate or encourage an outcome which is for the long-term benefit of the people of Israel as well as the people of Palestine. I believe that. I believe in the state of Israel, but on the pre-June 67 lines. And I believe in a state of Palestine, but a functioning state, not a, how shall I put it, not a puppet state, not a state with no rights, or a state with no leverage over its own well-being, over its own future. Getting there will require mutual security and belief in proof of mutual security. That can't be done by the two entities, the two peoples alone. So an outcome that guarantees better security, safety for Israelis, and for the first time in decades, safety and security for Palestinians is the aim. Getting there is very hard. It involves the UN. It involves major states like the UK, the US, France, and the recognition, which is coming up in September by the UK, by Canada, Australia, France, Malta, and a few more, is a possibility. It's an opening. It's a way that it could lead to the benign intervention of the international community, not against anybody, but in favour of mutual security and safety.
Thank you so much. I think that image of the rock is going to stay with me for a long time as a metaphor for the overall sort of existential conflict that Jerusalem represents. And from what you've been saying, I think the only way this conflict could be resolved is if Jerusalem could be in some way resolved as an issue between the two states. But thank you very, very much indeed. And that concludes our podcast on Jerusalem. And as I say, for me, I will take away that image of the rock as a metaphor for the entire situation and reflect on it from today onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thank you.